I would love to hear you talk a little bit about honor. It's really a core value of our church, and why do you think it's so important to the growth of our church?
I think that honor is best presented by somebody who is within the organization versus the person who's at the top of the organization. At the same time, I have been at all different levels and still am in my life in other relationships at all different levels of being the boss and being the guy under the boss and being far, far away from the boss. And honor is a core value to me for a couple of different reasons. I had a small town upbringing, and so there's a certain amount of politeness, respect, protocol, manners that you get instilled in you or forced upon you or beat into you or whatever you choose to do to get it in you. You're gonna get a few things in you. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, sir. It's just basic. And so that's one thing, that Southern vibe. Another thing about it is most of us that were on the core team of the church had come from another church, and I want to speak in an honoring way about them, so I'm going to keep this really broad and general. But there was a serious lack of honor. There was no honor in certain relationships. The pastor and the deacons basically had an all-out war. I think 6 of the 7 deacons resigned. The church began to disintegrate. It was at about half the size that we came into it. When we came to it, it was twice as large as it was at the point where we were getting ready to start our church. And then today, I think it's probably about 1/10 of the size that it was when we got there. And that may be generous. And so we all lived through that. And there was a point when Chunks called me, and this was right about the time I'd started to cast the vision, I really do want to go start this church, to a few of the people. And he'd been invited to a prayer meeting. And the prayer meeting was code for a split the church and talk crap about the pastor fest. And but that's called prayer meeting in traditional church life. And he didn't really know that that's what the meeting was, and he was calling me to get my advice on it. And I said, don't you dare go to that meeting. I said, the pastor is not a bad man. He's not unethical. He's not stealing anything. He's not preaching another gospel. He's not sleeping with anyone or hurting anyone that we're aware of. We have no reason to think that. If he were hurting others or preaching a false gospel, and by the way, what people will call a false gospel can range anything from they misinterpreted one of the verses in Hebrews 11 in a way that I wasn't comfortable with, to they're saying Jesus isn't the Son of God. So you can't just put the false gospel thing on everything. This guy was teaching some kind of out there stuff, but it wasn't another gospel. He still was preaching Jesus. And I said, we've got to stand by this man. He's our pastor. Until he's no longer our pastor, we're not accountable to God for what he does. We're accountable to God for what we do. And we've got to honor him. And this is a true story. This is what I said. I said, there's no place for that. And everybody who came to start the church with me, everybody who came here out of that church, first of all, we had told that pastor when I came on staff there, I had told him, I'm going to go start a church one day. And he said, I'll send anybody you want to take with you. So there wasn't some church split vibe to that. Secondly, I had watched what dishonor does to a church and how many people it hurts. And that's where I began to realize that the reason honor for spiritual leadership is important isn't primarily for the leader, it's primarily for the people and for the sake of the mission. See, because honor is the foundational building block of any type of progress or movement, whether you're talking about a country or a school. If you have a school where there's no honor for teachers and principals, you're gonna have a school where there's violence, you're gonna have a school where there's all kinds of immorality. And if there's one thing we're missing right now in our political climate, it's honor. And now it's only getting worse because everybody, at one point it was like everybody had access to books, but now everybody has their own printing press through a blog or Tumblr or Facebook or Twitter. And so everybody can share their opinion. And it's so easy to anonymously dishonor. And one of the things we've tried to create here at the church that turns some people off because they read into it that there's some hidden agenda, primarily in the fact that we have some protocols that our staff and our volunteers typically address me as Pastor Stephen. You wouldn't typically hear a staff member sit down with me and say, "So Steve, how's it going?" And a lot of people dislike that. Even some of the staff members are kind of laughing right now when I say it, because that's just so far-fetched that they would walk in and say that. And it's not because I think I'm some superhuman or because I think I'm some awesome person, but because I think the office that I hold is different than just getting to be one of the boys. I gave up my right to be one of the boys when I said, "Yes, God, I accept your call to be the pastor of your church." And whether you call me pastor or not may not be the ultimate thing. But at some point, there has to be an honor for spiritual leadership, and it has to go both ways. A lot of leaders want to command honor, but they don't want to be honorable. So they want to teach tithing, but they don't want to tithe. Well, me and Holly have always tried to be honorable in our giving and increase and give and give and give. They want to teach, in some instances, major faith, but they never take any risks. They always play it safe. So I think my responsibility is to be honorable. My responsibility is to make sure that our church is led by honorable men and women. To create a culture of honor means that honor flows in every direction. It's got to go, first of all, it's got to start with honoring those God has placed above us, starting with God himself. So an honor for God is the foundation for all other honor. Then we have to honor those who God has placed in authority over us. Right. We don't get to say certain things about our president. We can disagree with things and we can participate in a process, but we can never enter into dishonor. And the same thing is true for pastors. My pastor that I served under in the church I told you about called me about a year into Elevation Church after the growth had started to really explode. And he said something to me that really rewarded me and I thought spoke a lot of the team that had stuck with him when he was a difficult leader to follow. He said, "Stephen Furtick, I believe that God is honoring you." And he was talking about the whole team right now because he watched everybody stand by him until we went to start this church. We honored him, we supported him, we did the best we could. We weren't perfect, but we honored him. He said, "God's honoring you because you honored me when I was difficult to respect and to follow," because he was going through a lot of issues. And I thought, you know what? I'm glad that we build on a foundation of honor, and I'm glad that I don't have to, and here's the key teaching that seems to be a light bulb for so many people. I don't have to respect all the decisions someone is making to honor the place God has put them in. And obviously we stand up to immorality and justice. We're not trying to get everybody to drink Kool-Aid around here. And if you think that's the kind of team that we are, you haven't spent any time around us. There's a lot of honesty. There's a lot of accountability that I've submitted myself to. I have a pastor, Pastor Craig Rochelle. He's the pastor that I honor. I believe every pastor, if they can, should have a pastor, someone that they honor, someone that they defer to. I also have a board of overseers. Those men are pastors of churches that are at the same level or beyond the level of Elevation Church. They're all older than me. They're not intimidated by me. I'm submitted to them. I submit my personal finances to not only that board, but Pastor Craig. And I feel like that in order for me to be a leader worth following, there's got to be people in my life who are bigger than me. Yeah. And I try to keep those people in my life, and then so that I can lead with confidence. But God really dealt with me one time about this deal of honor. And I was trying to do this false humility thing. Well, I don't want to do the honor thing because then it makes it look like it's all about me. And it's as if the Lord said to me, are you building a church based on how it looks? Are you into image management? Or are you into biblical leadership? Because biblical leadership is honor. Honor up, honor down, honor all around. There should be a culture of honor flowing through a healthy church. And honor expresses itself in different ways to different people. the way that I honor someone who works for me wouldn't be the same way that someone would honor their boss who they work for. It looks different. But there should be a heart of honor. Honor simply means value and weight. And so we always want to create a culture of honor. It's ridiculous that we put more honor on the professions of professional coaches and athletes than we do sometimes on those who minister for the Lord, or those who teach in the schools, or moms and dads. So we're overall trying to restore honor, and if it's going to start anywhere, it's got to start with the church. We're not always perfect in this, but we try to honor other churches, other ministries, honor what people are doing in the kingdom of God, and try to be honorable, and hopefully that flows through. And it creates an element of honor that flows to me and my family, so that we're sustained and encouraged and able to do what God's called us to do, and that we're humble enough to receive that honor. But then there's also hopefully that same honor that touches the first-time guest, the person who's far from God, because we've learned how to honor. And if there's a comment that's made by the leaders that come through here who are exposed to our culture, they remark about the culture of honor, how refreshing it is, how important it is. And then a lot of them come through here and say, if I would have built the culture of honor that you've built, we wouldn't have had the shipwreck that we had, because we built something where everybody thought they get to bring their vision to the table. And what we ended up with was a schizophrenic church and organization. And there was no leadership and no direction, and a lot of people get wounded. So the downside to honor is that you have to watch out that it doesn't just become a bunch of protocol that has no heart behind it. The downside of honor in some cases can be that people aren't speaking the truth, and they're just saying what they think someone wants to hear. But true honor doesn't result in any of those things. True honor is genuine, it's authentic, it's from the heart, it's direct, and it's loyal. And it's given based on who God is, not based on what somebody else is or is not doing.